the cities and Sumer were destroyed, and depict some of the agonies and the wretchedness and the misery of these conquests.
Sumerian tablets talk about a place called Kher that is deep inside our planet. Most people think it is just a myth, but these ancient writers gave us a key detail that changes everything.
These messages from ancient times to try to get us to appreciate who we really are, where we really came from, and why we're really here.
They did not describe a ghost world. They described a physical place with stone gates and rivers of dust. This is where things get wild, because they even gave us a location for the entrance. If you think the Earth is just solid rock all the way down, you are missing the truth here. Nobody expected these clay tablets to be a map to a hidden civilization, but then everything changed. Ancient portals to the deep. Sumerian scribes worked with clay and small sticks to write down the history of the world over 5,000 years ago. They lived in a place we now call Iraq, and they were the first ones to build big cities and use math. But among all their records about grain and laws, they wrote something that sounds like science fiction. They described a place called Kher. Now, what most people don't realize is that Kher was not just a heaven or a hell in the way we think about them today. It was a tangible place that existed physically beneath the ground. This is a key detail, because it means they believed you could actually walk there if you found the right hole in the earth. The tablets recovered from sites like Nippur and Eridu show us that this inner world was huge. It had its own weather and its own rules. The Sumerians used a word that meant mountain to describe this place. This sounds weird at first. How can a mountain be underground? They called it a mountain below, which suggests a massive cavern with high ceilings and rocky walls. See, they were not talking about a small cave. They were talking about a space so big it felt like an upside-down mountain range. There are still many rumors in the air, but what many can confirm is that these descriptions were very consistent across hundreds of years. The scribes were very careful to write down that this place had gates. Specifically, there were 7 gates you had to pass through to get to the heart of the inner world. This sounds more like a high security base than a myth. Each gate was guarded by a being who would not let you pass unless you gave up something important. Basically, the entrance to this place was not just some random crack in the dirt. The tablets point to a very specific area. They mention the Eastern Mountains, which most experts think are the Zagros Mountains. This range stretches through modern Iran and Iraq for about 930 miles. It is a rugged and tall place with peaks that reach over 14,000 feet into the sky. The Sumerians believed that somewhere in those jagged rocks was the mouth of Kher. It was a physical opening that led straight down into the deep. One of the most overlooked aspects of this story is how they described the descent. It was not a magical teleport, it was a long walk down dark tunnels. Wait, it gets better. They did not just say it was dark and scary, they described the architecture. They said there were palaces made of lapis, lazuli, and gold. The ruler of this place was a goddess named Ereshkigal. She lived in a palace called Ganzir. This building was right at the entrance of the inner world. Think of it like a customs office for a hidden country. Every single tablet that mentions this palace talks about it as a real structure with doors and bars. It is not that simple though, because the environment inside was harsh. They described it as a place where people ate clay and drank dust. This might be a way of saying that nothing grows down there without sunlight. But then, everything changed when archaeologists started finding these tablets in the 19th century. They realized that the Sumerians had a very complex view of the earth. They did not think it was a solid ball of dirt, they thought it was layered. Under the surface where we live, there was a massive ocean of fresh water called the Abzu, and under that ocean was the rocky world of Kher. This means they believed in at least 2 different levels of world under our feet. And get this, the Anunnaki gods were said to have come from the sky, but then they moved into these underground spaces. The real kicker is that they supposedly built these places using technology that we still do not understand. The story of the descent of Inanna is one of the most famous pieces of writing from this time. It tells us how the Queen of Heaven decided to visit her sister in the Underworld. She did not just wish herself there, she had to travel to the mountains and find the entrance. As she went through each of the 7 gates, she had to take off one piece of her jewelry or her clothes. By the time she reached the bottom, she had nothing left. This is where the story takes a hard left. It shows that even a god had to follow the physical laws of the inner earth. You could not just walk in and do whatever you wanted. There was a strict system of control. Many are not seeing the truth here, but this story might be a coded way of explaining how to get through a high-tech security system. Rules of the subterranean realm. A lot of people are confused about how someone could actually move around in a place that is miles underground. But a recently found tablet called Ni 12501 gives us some crazy clues. This tablet was found in the ruins of Nippur, and it tells a story that was lost for a long time. It talks about a god named Ishkur, who was the god of storms. According to the text, he was captured and dragged down into Kur. When he was taken, the surface world started to die. The rain stopped, and the crops failed. This shows how the Sumerians thought the inner world and the outer world were connected. If something went wrong down there, it affected everyone up here. So, here's the deal. The other gods were too scared to go down and save him. They knew that if you went into the inner world, you might never come back. But then, a fox stepped up and said he would do it. Now this sounds like a fable, but the way the fox gets in is very interesting. He does not use magic, he uses trickery and knowledge of the rules. See, the inner world had very strict laws about food and drink. If you ate anything offered to you by the people of the deep, you were stuck there forever. It was like a biological bond that tied you to the location. The fox figured out a way to pretend to eat the food while hiding it in his fur. This allowed him to stay mobile and keep his energy while searching for the trapped god. This part of the story reveals that the inner earth was a place of high stakes. It was not just a cavern, it was a territory with its own sovereignty. The fox had to navigate through tunnels and avoid guardians that are described as being very powerful. The tablets say that Kur drags people down like a weight. This could be a description of gravity or some kind of magnetic force that pulls things toward the center of the earth. The unthinkable happened when the fox finally reached Ishkur and managed to lead him back to the surface. It was a daring escape through those same 7 gates. Each gate had to be opened in reverse. Looking back, that was the red flag that these stories were more than just fairy tales. They describe the physical process of entering and exiting a sealed environment. One of the most interesting parts of this specific tablet is how it describes the children of the city vanishing into the earth. It says the earth opened its mouth and took them. This happened in a place near the mountains. If we look at the geography of the region, there are many deep limestone caves and sinkholes. Some of these go down for thousands of feet. In the minds of the Sumerians, these were not just holes, they were the hallways that led to the city of the gods. Hands down, the most fascinating part of this rescue mission is the description of the multicolored cattle that were trapped with Ishkur. Why would an underground world have cattle? The text says they were glowing or had many colors. This might be a way of describing bioluminescence or some kind of weird technology that the beings in the deep used. We see this in many other stories where people go underground and find glowing plants or animals. It turns out that the Sumerians believed the deep was full of life. It was not a dead place, it was a busy world with its own economy and its own problems. But there was a catch they didn't see coming. Even after Ishkur was saved, the gods decided that the entrance had to be guarded more closely. They did not want people or animals just wandering down there whenever they wanted. That is when the story mentions the scorpion men. These were half-human and half-scorpion beings that stood at the mountain of the sun. They were the elite guards of the inner earth. Their job was to watch the horizon and make sure that only the chosen ones could find the path. The real shocker is that, even today, people in that part of the world tell stories about strange beings seen near the old cave systems in the mountains. primordial waters of creation. While the world of Ker was rocky and dark, there was another layer that the Sumerians talked about even more. This was the Abzu. It was a massive ocean of fresh water that sat right under the surface of the earth. The god who ruled this place was Enki. He was the god of wisdom and science. He did not live in a palace on a hill. He lived in a house called the Abzu in the city of Eridu. But the catch was that his house was built over a hole that went straight down into the freshwater deep. This is where he did all his work. The tablets describe Enki as a master engineer who created humans in his underground laboratory. What most people don't realize is that the Sumerians did not think fresh water came from the sky as rain. They thought it bubbled up from the Abzu. They believed that every river and every spring was just a small leak from the giant ocean inside the earth. This is why the city of Eridu was so holy. It was the place where you could be closest to the source of all life. But there is a massive caveat. The Abzu was also a place of mystery and danger. It was where Enki kept the Mi, which were like high-tech blueprints for civilization. They were physical objects that contained the knowledge of how to build cities, write laws, and make weapons. Basically, the Abzu was like a giant server room for the entire world. Everything that made life work was stored down there. Enki's palace was full of workshops and rooms where he would experiment with life. In the creation myths, he took clay from the deep and mixed it with divine blood to make the first people. This sounds a lot like genetic engineering happening in a lab. And where was this lab? It was deep underground where no one could interfere. This is where the story takes a hard left. If the gods were using the inner earth for high-tech experiments, it would explain why they were so protective of the entrances. Nobody saw this coming, but the tablets actually give measurements for the Abzu. They describe it as having a depth that is hard to imagine. If we use our modern measures, it would be like a world that starts a few miles down and goes for hundreds of miles. They said the water was pure and sweet, and it never ran out. For an ancient person living in a hot desert, a world of endless fresh water would be the ultimate paradise, but it was also a fortress. Enki was known for being very smart, and he had his own set of guards and helpers who lived with him in the water. One of the most overlooked aspects of the Abzu is how it connects to the myth of the Great Flood. When the gods decided to wipe out humanity with a giant wave, they said the fountains of the deep were opened. This means the water did not just fall from the clouds, it erupted from the ground. The Abzu literally overflowed. This matches up with many other cultures that say the flood came from under the earth. It all came crashing down when the surface world was covered in miles of water. But Enki was safe, because his home was deep below the chaos. He was able to watch everything from his secure bunker under the crust. Fast forward to the part where the floodwaters went away. The tablets say that the water went back down into the Abzu. It was like a giant drain. This implies a very complex plumbing system for the entire planet. The Sumerians were obsessed with irrigation and moving water around, so it makes sense that they would see the earth itself as a giant machine for managing water. But the real kicker is that they believed the Abzu was still there, and that Enki was still working in his hidden halls. They thought that if you were wise enough, you could still hear his voice coming up from the deep wells in the temples. Mapping the Gate of the Sun. As we look at these tablets, we have to ask ourselves where these physical entrances actually are. The Sumerians were very clear about the direction. They pointed to the east. This brings us back to the Zagros Mountains, but it also goes further. Some researchers think the mouth of Ker is part of a much bigger network of tunnels that spans the entire globe. They connect the Sumerian stories to things like the kingdom of Agartha or Shambhala in Asia. The idea is that there is a giant hollow space inside the earth, and the Sumerians just had one of the main doors. See, there are places in the mountains of Tajikistan and Iran that have massive cave systems that have never been fully explored. One of the most famous is the Fergana Valley area. Local legends there talk about gateway caves that lead to a world of light and advanced people. This sounds exactly like what the Sumerian tablets were describing thousands of years ago. A lot of people are confused about how a place could be dark and full of light at the same time. But the tablets say the gods had their own light. They did not need the sun. This could mean they had some kind of artificial lighting or electricity. Little did they know that modern science would eventually find massive anomalies deep under the crust. We have discovered giant blobs of material near the core of the planet that are the size of continents. While scientists call them thermal anomalies, others wonder if they are the actual structures the Sumerians wrote about. And that was just the beginning. Some people think the Anunnaki did not leave Earth. They just moved into these inner spaces to escape the changing climate on the surface. After the flood, the world became a lot harder to live in. It was too hot or too cold, and the animals were different. Moving underground would be a smart move for an advanced civilization. But then, everything changed when explorers started looking for these gates in the modern age. There are stories about secret expeditions into the mountains to find the entrance to Kur. Some people believe that governments have already found these places and they are hiding them from the public. They call them deep underground military bases now, but they might just be reoccupied ancient cities. The real kicker is that the Sumerian tablets provide a list of passwords for the gates. If someone found the physical doors today, they might actually be able to get inside using the words written on clay 5,000 years ago. And get this, the scorpion men who were said to guard the gate of the sun are often described in other cultures too. The Egyptians had similar guardians, and so did the people in South America. It is like there was a global security force protecting the entrances to the inner world. This is a key detail, because it shows the story was not just limited to one small group of people. Everyone knew about the world below, they just had different names for it. But the Sumerians gave the most detail. They were the ones who wrote down the dimensions and the names of the guards. Just when you thought it was over, you find out that some of these tablets are still being translated. Every year, we find more fragments that fill in the gaps. We are learning about more gods who lived underground and more paths that lead there. It turns out that the Earth might be like a giant onion with many layers of history and life hidden under our feet. The Sumerians were not just making up stories to explain the dark, they were leaving a legacy of information for anyone brave enough to go looking. And that was the moment everything shifted for researchers, who realized these tablets might be literal maps. Secrets of the hidden gods. So, we have all these tablets and all these stories about a world inside our own. What do we do with this information? Most people will tell you it is just a bunch of old myths from people who did not understand how the world worked. But then you look at the consistency of the details and you start to wonder, why would they spend so much time writing about the logistics of gatekeepers and palace dimensions if it was just a dream? It is not that simple though, because the Sumerians were incredibly smart. They gave us the 60-minute hour and the 360-degree circle. They were masters of observation. Looking back, that was the red flag we should have paid attention to earlier. If they were right about the stars and right about math, why would they be wrong about the ground? Many are not seeing the truth here because they are afraid of what it means. If there is a physical world under our feet, it changes everything we know about geography and our own history. We are not just living on a rock, we are living on the roof of a much older and, maybe, much more advanced civilization. The real shocker is that we are only now starting to have the technology to look deep enough to see if they were right. But wait, it gets better. There are still many rumors in the air about what happened to the beings who lived there. Did they leave? Are they still watching us? Some people think that the sightings of strange objects in the sky are actually things coming from under the ground. The Sumerians said the gods could fly, and they could also disappear into the earth. This is a key detail that links the past to the present. We are looking at the same mysteries, but we are using different words. They called them gods, and we call them something else. Against all logic, the tablets suggest that we might actually be related to the people in the deep. If Enki really did his genetic experiments in the Abzu, then we are his creations. We are the workers he made to handle the surface world while he stayed in the comfort of the freshwater abyss. This is where the story takes a hard left. It means we are not the masters of this planet, we are just the tenants. The real owners are still down there in the dark. And get this, the tablets say they will return one day to check on their work. The final inscriptions on several Sumerian tablets contain a specific warning that researchers frequently overlook. These ancient records describe Kur as a physical realm located deep within the earth, rather than a purely spiritual afterlife. The texts explicitly state that the gates separating our world from this interior space are temporary. According to these accounts, Kur will eventually open its mouth when the time is right, implying a future event where the surface and the subterranean worlds will finally reconnect. This represents a prophecy of a massive structural shift that reunites two disparate parts of the planet. The evidence supporting these claims is surprisingly robust. We have access to detailed maps, specific ancient names, and precise geographic coordinates that align with these descriptions. The primary obstacle remains a lack of collective initiative to physically investigate these sites. We are currently walking over immense secrets every single day without realizing the scale of what lies below us. The mountain ranges likely conceal massive hallways and expansive palaces that have stood for thousands of years in total isolation. These tablets act as a preserved message from the dawn of human history. They suggest that humanity is not the sole inhabitant of this planet, but is instead sharing the Earth with an older presence that has been largely forgotten. This realization changes the entire framework of modern exploration. The most significant discoveries likely reside within the Earth's crust, rather than in deep space or on distant planets. We have spent a vast amount of time looking at the horizon for answers while ignoring the reality beneath our feet. The truth is much closer than we typically care to admit, and it only requires the willingness to seek out the physical doors mentioned in these ancient records. What if the Sumerians were telling the truth about a secret world right under our feet? Could we be living on the roof of an advanced civilization? Like and subscribe for more.